Welcome to Theology Unpacked. Today we're diving into the final chapters of the book of Proverbs. And listen, this isn't just a collection of old, dusty sayings. It's a profound guide to living well, ethically in our society and in our own homes. And you'll see it speaks so directly to the complexities of our modern lives.
This verse right here, it just perfectly nails the tension we all live with, right? We plan, we prepare, we work our tails off, we get that horse ready for battle. But at the end of the day, the outcome, the victory, belongs to the Lord. This is the big idea we're going to unpack today, that incredible dance between our effort and God's ultimate control.
So here's how we're going to break it down. We'll look at this wisdom in 5 key areas, kind of moving from the inside out. We'll start with our hearts and the heavens, then move to justice for the vulnerable, how to handle conflict, what it means to be a good leader, and finally, bring it all right back home.
Our whole journey has to start right here, because all biblical wisdom really begins with understanding our place in the big picture. It's about figuring out that relationship between what God controls and, what we're actually supposed to do.
The scriptures give us this really amazing picture. On one side, you have God's total control. It says he can turn a king's heart like a farmer digging an irrigation ditch. But on the other side, we're told, get the horse ready for battle. I love the analogy of a sailor. Think about it. She has zero control over the wind, that's God's part, but she is 100% responsible for setting the sails. That's our part. We do our work, and we have to trust God with the final result.
And while we're so busy getting our horses ready and setting our sails, God's actually looking at something way deeper. We are experts at justifying ourselves, aren't we? The verse says, every way of a man is right in his own eyes. But the Bible tells us the Lord weighs the heart, our motives, our intentions. That's the real measure. That's what actually matters.
Okay, so once we get that internal foundation right, Proverbs immediately moves outward. It's basically saying that a right heart with God has to show up in how we treat other people, especially those who are the most vulnerable in our society. And this slide just lays out God's priorities so clearly. Religious rituals, what the verse calls sacrifice, they're fine, but they are not the main point. Proverbs makes it crystal clear. Doing what is right and just in our communities is more pleasing to God than all those ceremonies. Ethical action is a form of worship. This might be one of the most sobering verses in the whole book. It sets up this really powerful spiritual dynamic. If we close our ears to the cry of the poor, why should we expect God to listen when we cry out for help? It directly links our compassion for others to the compassion we hope to receive.
All right, let's bring this down to street level. How does this wisdom help us in the messy, day-to-day stuff? Like, how do we deal with difficult people, get through arguments, and face our own bad habits, like making excuses?
Here's a question we all run into. How should you respond to a fool? We've all been there, right? Whether it's a family squabble or some crazy online comment thread, you're always wondering, do I engage with this or do I just walk away? Well, the scriptures actually give some surprisingly specific advice.
Now, this is what's so fascinating. You've got these 2 verses right next to each other, and they seem to say the complete opposite thing. One says, don't answer a fool because you'll just stoop to their level. The very next verse says, answer a fool so they don't get away with thinking they're wise. So what gives? Well, that's the wisdom. It's not a contradiction. It's a call for discernment. You have to have the wisdom to know which situation calls for which response.
Proverbs also gets really real about our internal struggles, especially procrastination. This verse about the sluggard is kind of funny, but it's also painfully relatable. He says, there's a lion outside. How often do we do that? We invent some crazy worst-case scenario, our own lion in the streets, just to avoid doing the tough but necessary thing that's sitting right in front of us.
So from those personal conflicts, the book zooms out to the national level. It gives us a blueprint for what makes for a good leader, and really what makes a society stable and just.
For anyone in a leadership role, and that could be a CEO, a prime minister, or a community organizer, this is just so crucial. Proverbs teaches that real power isn't secured by force or by bribes, it's established by righteousness. A leader's position is made stable by making sure the poor get a fair shake, and it's built up by searching for the truth. See, justice isn't just some lofty ideal here, it is the actual bedrock of any lasting authority. And finally, after all this talk about kings and justice and social dynamics, the book brings all of its grand wisdom right back to where we live, the home. We're going to close out by looking at the words of 2 new voices, Agur and King Lemuel. Agur has this great way of teaching us to find wisdom in the most unexpected places. He points to these 4 tiny creatures.
They're not strong, but he says they're exceedingly wise. The ants teach foresight. The rock badgers teach us how to build security. The locusts show us the power of cooperation. And the lizard, it teaches audacity. It can get into a king's palace. It's such a beautiful reminder that wisdom is literally all around us if we're just humble enough to look for it. And then, the entire book of Proverbs builds to this final famous poem. It was taught to King Lemuel by his mother, and it's this incredibly rich portrait of a character who really embodies all the wisdom we've been talking about.
Now, it's really important to see this not as some impossible checklist for women. It's a holistic picture of a person of valor, a true hero. This person is diligent, resourceful, strong, wise, and so compassionate. Their character becomes a source of blessing for everyone around them, and that influence just ripples out for generations. And really, the whole book boils down to this one idea. After 31 chapters of incredible wisdom, the thing that gets the final praise isn't looks or charm. Those things are fleeting. The highest praise is saved for a character that's rooted in what the scriptures call the fear of the Lord, which is just a deep, profound reverence and awe for God.
So we'll leave you with this question to think about. When you look at your own life, your inner world, your relationships, your work, your responsibilities, where do you need this ancient practical wisdom from Proverbs the most right now? Thanks for tuning in to Theology Unpacked. Please like, subscribe, and share this with the first person you thought of who needs to hear it.